With the 2025 PokeMMO event season cycle now wrapped up, I want to use this video as a way to dive into everything that's happened this year. The lessons that we learn, experiences we have shared, and all of the changes we have seen. Hello, my name is Spook, or Too Spooky. I've been playing this game for a little while now and recently started making content. If you enjoy these longer form videos, please make sure to support the channel in any way you think is necessary. We have a lot to go through, so I won't waste any of your time. Now, I will be showing some screenshots mostly taken from the forums within this video. I probably don't need to say this, but please don't direct any negativity towards any of these people. Everyone is allowed their own opinions and shouldn't be shunned for stating them.
I hate this fucking game. I love it. I love that I hate it. I like it. I don't like it.
Kicking off with the first event of the cycle in 2025 is the Great Shiny Wars. There are a handful of controversial topics surrounding this event, and I will not be covering anything that has to do with silly arguments around things like foot pedals or anything similar. I'm here to document the event and the changes we saw in-game, not drama farm. Announced on June 18th of 2025 by Enzo on the forums, Shiny Wars was set to take place from July 11th through August 8th, with some of the most talented and dedicated players from across the world taking part in catching as many shinies as possible in order to be crowned the best hunters in the game, and get some pretty cool shiny Charizard wings too. Shiny Wars had people hyped, being PokeMMO's newest event and appealing to a large portion of the playbase, with the most dedicated players prepping things like Dittos, pre-made eggs, shiny charms, donated status, lepers, and fossils. Some of them spending anywhere from 500 million to 2 billion Pokeyen over the course of the war. But it wasn't just about the money. The amount of team management, recruiting, and real-world obligations that people had to put aside for this is just mind-blowing. I was already impressed by the sheer amount of prep that players had to put into the Shiny Wars, but I think it was really all put into perspective when I saw this video, by Dining with 6Ys. If you are all interested in looking at what it takes to place first in the Shiny Wars, please check this out. It's a very interesting watch. Now, I place so much emphasis on the preparation part of the war due to what's coming next. To any of the participants or anyone even remotely involved with the community at all, you probably know what's about to come up here. June 28th, 2025, just 10 days after the initial announcement, Enzo announced that the event was going to be delayed by a full 2 weeks, now being set to run from July 25th through August 22nd. The post was very vague and surface level, offering no form of explanation as to why the event was delayed, except for being able to host and arrange the best event possible. As you can imagine, the community was outraged, with players wanting answers as to why the event was moved, explaining how they had planned their real-life commitments around the set date and how they now wouldn't be able to participate, and much more. Now, following seeing the community outrage, we were given a response from one of the devs, Rich, explaining how the event was delayed as a request from the dev team, as they were planning to add some changes to the wild encounters, hordes, and some other quality of life features, mainly the in-game encounter tracker. This did not do very much in order to quell the negative feelings coming from the community. Instead, it seemed to give them more of a reason to be frustrated, with players stating how they chose to change the encounter tables right before the event that this would most significantly impact. Along with these new frustrations, this set of posts also made it quite clear how, at best, there was a miscommunication between the devs and the mods, and at worst, a lack of communication entirely. Later that same day, Hugh, one of the lead developers for the game, announced that the event was returning to the original timeline of starting on the 11th. The decision was made likely as a result of the community being so vocal about their opinions on the change. Hugh would also give a little more insight into his thought process about ordering the change. This seemed to have mixed reactions, with some people approaching the post with understanding. However, others were left with a sour taste in their mouth, and understandably so. July 11th, 2025, the patch notes for the Shiny Wars dropped, posting a plethora of changes, from some visual overhauls of status moves, visual overhauls of a lot of the cosmetics, a long-awaited encounter tracker, some changes to the Global Trade Link, or GTL, Sweet Scent Ocarina, changes to some phases available in Hordes, and 2 new Flaming Sword vanities. Please can we end the Flaming Demon trend? Along with some other additions and bug fixes. Also within the update were some more controversial changes that are still having an effect on the game a whole 9 months later as of recording this video. The first of these additions is the chum bucket, a consumable item bought from the gift shop, meaning it needs to be brought into the game with real world money. The chum bucket allows the user to guarantee an encounter with each cast of their rod, along with allowing the player to encounter up to hordes of 3 while using the chum bucket. Now the issue arrives when you look at just how much of a buff the chum bucket provides. Prior to the chum bucket being added, fishing encounters would net you around 220 encounters within an hour. While using a chum bucket, this number can reach as high as 460 encounters in the hour, or potentially even more. This is a whole 100% buff. Again, if not more. While this is great, buffing something by such a significant amount in one go is definitely an interesting and controversial change. By far the most controversial change within this update was the change to how we hatch eggs and the dreaded temporary incubators. Prior to the addition of incubators, for those who don't know, we would have to hold 5 eggs in our party along with a flame body Pokemon. Once they hatch, we would have to go into the PC and swap them out for more eggs. This was slow, but in my opinion a fair way of doing things. You're sacrificing the time and money in order to hunt one specific species of Pokemon of your choosing. Incubators flip this concept on its head, now providing a separate window in-game where you can store your eggs and the flame body Pokemon, with it also linking directly to the PC, so you no longer have to hold the eggs in your party or worry about travelling back to the PC every 4 to 5 minutes. While the change still has a lot of mixed opinions, some players seeing it as a fairly good quality of life change and prove to be much more time efficient for those who consistently egg hunt, allowing them to take part in other hunts while also hatching the eggs. Others think that the change is not a good one, with it changing a fundamental system that has been in the game for years, without proper consideration of the implications. We are able to acquire 8 incubators through in-game progression, reaching certain milestones within the game, which is fine. If something is obtainable within the means of gameplay, I'm personally all for it. Even having an additional 3 extra slots to hatch eggs was a buff to how many eggs was possible to be hatched within the hour. On top of this change, the devs also added temporary incubators, adding a further 7 that would break after 500 uses each, and be purchasable from the gift shop, again needing to be brought in with real world money, similar to the chum buckets. Now the real issue is when we look at the numbers associated with these additional 7 incubators and what they would bring, how accessible they would be and how necessary they would be deemed to hunt efficiently. The addition of temporary incubators was almost universally disliked, so much so that the devs removed them from the game within an extremely short time frame within the same day, coming out with a statement that they would be looking into how they could improve the system. Despite these changes, the community was determined to enjoy the event and grind the ever-living shit out of the game in order for a chance to become the best of the best. At the end of the event, Spiel Team 7 came out on top, ETG Team 1 in second, and Team Moon in third. Huge congratulations to these teams, and to all of those who finished in the top 50. Some of the changes that we saw were good, however. The in-game encounter tracker, while long overdue, is a great addition to the game, allowing players to flex how early they hit an insane shiny, or how dry they went on a hunt. Some of the cosmetic changes have also proved to be really popular. I remember at the time the conical hat was very popular, and seen almost everywhere you went. These cosmetic changes, along with the smaller, more subtle features such as the updated sprites in battle and how they now show if a mon is sleeping, as well as the status effects, were great smaller changes that add a little bit of extra something to the game. Again, I didn't personally participate in Shiny Wars, so my opinion holds significantly less weight here, and of course, the way the lead up to the event was handled was pretty much universally considered to be inadequate. I still believe that it served as a much needed learning experience for the devs. It is important to remember that this is only the second ever Shiny Wars to date, so there was bound to be some hiccups. I think we just didn't expect them to be this severe. Hopefully the upcoming 2026 Shiny War will see more clear and concise communication from the devs. I'm actually kind of happy when I say that there wasn't as much of a dramatic lead up to the Halloween update as there was during the Shiny Wars. It makes my job easier and the video a little bit less convoluted. That being said, there was a handful of pretty insightful forums posts made by Q at the time. Another forums user posted about having some concerns with some in-game features and their implementations, actually starting a healthy conversation around the topic rather than just shitposting and hating on the devs. This seemed to get the attention of Q, so there are multiple posts here that he made, but I'm going to summarize them, otherwise this section would take way too long. Essentially, Q began by giving some insight into how the temporary incubators came to be an idea in the first place, stating that they would likely return once the crafting system has been introduced. Along with this, Q also did some explaining when it comes to the design philosophy into balancing the game, mentioning how when it comes to the in-game market, they do not want to influence or direct it, but rather provide the players with an incentive. Q also gave his opinion on free-to-play money-making methods, primarily those that have been nerfed previously, such as gym reruns. He explained the changes as something similar to a cost-reward system, explaining how there is not a limiting factor when it comes to cost, apart from the time investment, which for gym reruns is only an hour. Q would continue to conversate with players for a little while, providing some slightly less important information that I won't be covering in this video. If you'd like to take a look at the full forum post in detail, I will leave in a link down to below, and that's the same with every single forum post discussed within this video. Just prior to the Halloween event dropping, we saw the dev team drop a PTS, or Player Test Server. This was primarily to allow the players to test the new and upcoming VGC Doubles PvP tier, but we also saw a couple of other silly things. And finally, in the early hours of November 1st, for me at least, I'm British, the event finally went live. The event had a lot of stuff that we were expecting from previous years, and the core gameplay loop of the Halloween event remained the same. Beat up children, take their candy. Beat up some pumpkins, take their candy. And then beat up the big pumpkin and take the big rewards. Along with the classic Halloween themed swarms, Pumpcat and Wisp hide and seek game modes, which upon completing would give you unique rewards. And finally, raids, when upon completing all 7 you would unlock an additional 2 Darkrai raids, which would allow you to earn Darkrai temporarily for up to what I believe is 2 hours a week. I honestly don't know, I've never used it. We also saw the introduction of some new alphas, some pretty cool ones if I have to say so. With the introduction of the Alpha Fossils and Hydreigon, all from the mysterious Dusk Balls. That wasn't all though, we also saw the introduction of what will become a new returning item across all of the events this year, the PvP Mystery Box. You gain this mystery box from competing in the new Halloween Randoms PvP. Upon queuing into a game, you would be given 4 random Halloween themed Pokemon and battle your opponent in a rotational triple battle, juggling 3 different Pokemon at one time. I didn't personally play much of this mode, but it quickly became popular and one of, if not the best ways of making money throughout the event. I think adding an element of PvP into an event was a great idea. It allows players who enjoy PvP a way to reliably make money throughout the event and enjoy themselves at the same time. It also served as a way to keep things fresh and gives people a way to break up the monotony of the usual event grind. With the Halloween event also came the release of VGC Doubles, a popular mode within the mainline games of Pokemon. While on paper this is great, a new mode and one of the most competitive formats should be good for the game's PvP scene, right? However, if we are looking at how many games have been played of the Doubles, it brings to the question of if it was introduced at a strange time or if there's just not enough interest in the mode. Personally, as someone who played VGC Doubles in Gens 6, 7 and 8, I love it and plan to break into the mode now that the event season is over. But just looking at the statistics and from my own experience in talking to people who play PvP consistently, generally the PokeMMO player base seems to enjoy singles more. The client also went through some performance improvements, and I've seen some mixed reviews about this one. I've had a handful of people mention to me how much better the game feels for them to play after these changes. These people seem to be playing on lower end devices, so that's great for them. However, myself and other people who play on more powerful devices have noticed that the game has noticeably more crashes and instability. I guess this change being good depends on if it affects you or not. This performance improvement change is also when I believe the visual bug of the character was introduced. I don't know the cause, but occasionally you will see players switch outfits or be completely naked and have limited movement. This is all client side and honestly is pretty funny to see most of the time though. Onto the part of any event I personally get most excited for, the cosmetics. I'm happy to say that Halloween 2025 introduced some absolute gas cosmetics. Some of my personal favourites being the green slime hat and the puffy witch set. I really do appreciate the sheer number of cosmetics that were added within this update. Even a lot of the common vanities still look like they had a lot of effort put into them. I also appreciate how the devs and the art team, I guess, are now showing that they're willing to be a little bit more silly and experimental with what they're introducing to the game. One of the really nice things they added this event cycle was the addition of players receiving a vanity upon completing the event-specific raids. Completing all of the raids now rewards you with a specific cosmetic. Providing players with an additional reward for their time and effort is always a great thing to be added, even if you can just buy it from the GTL anyway. Not everything about this event was sunshine and rainbows though. There were some changes that the players were really not happy with. These changes were mostly to do with the Pumpkin boss battle, nerfing a very popular strategy for defeating the boss. This made people scramble to create new strats in order to consistently defeat the boss and farm pumpkin bags and the particle effects. This could have been for multiple reasons. If we're going off of Q's post prior to the event dropping, it very well could have been due to the perceived cost of running the strategy being a low effort one. But from my understanding, the strategy was not 100% foolproof to begin with, and still required anyone farming the boss to be paying attention and being able to adapt on the fly. I can't weigh in too heavily here since I did not farm the boss after seeing how much the price dropped very quickly. The devs also nerfed the rewards received from the fight from 5 king bags to only 4, which only further served to upset the community who were farming the boss. In my personal opinion, this change could have been made in an attempt to combat the oversupply of king bags coming into the economy. While it may have been a little bit late, and again this is the inner optimist in me speaking, I actually believe they learned just how heavily the player base will farm these events and kept that in mind for the upcoming events. Towards the end of the event, we also saw an additional patch get pushed. In here we saw the introduction of the permanent Cresselia raid. This would require full OT dex completion and a party of 4. Cresselia is one of my favourite legendaries aesthetically, so I really do appreciate this addition, and I know a lot of the raid community enjoy having more content to theorycraft and participate in too. Finally, a big change they made was to how gym reruns worked, now requiring a minimum number of trainers to be defeated before rebattling, even after the usual reset timer was over. While it may seem insignificant to the casual player base, this was a complete removal of a money-making strategy that some players were using. They would set multiple alt characters within the Striaton City Gym in Unova, battle the 3 leaders, while being on an amulet coin or richest charm, then log out, saving the time on the charm and min-maxing the amount of money made per day. This caused some further distaste within the community, but ultimately I believe this change was needed for the betterment of the game. The Halloween update was a mix of up and downs for the community. We saw multiple nerfs and not everyone was happy about it. However, we most notably saw an increase in communication from the devs, providing us with some insight into the design philosophy behind the game, which I think is a huge win for the long-term betterment of the game, allowing us as a community to understand some of the changes that are made going forward. The event itself was mostly the same as every other year. The real standout additions were that of the additional Cresselia raid and the addition of PvP mystery boxes. Both of these things would serve as a baseline for some of the upcoming features of the Christmas and Lunar New Year events. Personally, I feel like this event served as a nice starting point for the event cycle. While we had Shiny Wars, Halloween still serves as a starting point in many ways for most people. The additions we saw set the standard for what we were to see in the upcoming Christmas and Lunar New Year events. Some of the standout additions from Halloween were the Cresselia raid and the addition of the PvP mystery boxes. Overall, I was fairly happy with this event. However, I can completely understand just how frustrating the changes and multiple nerfs to the Pumpkin boss battle will have been for a majority of the player base. To the best of my knowledge, and from what I've found, or rather not found, I don't believe there was anything too exciting going on in the lead up to the Christmas event. I guess the only notable mentions would be that on December 1st, devs migrated the servers, making EU ping significantly worse, with players seeing an increase of around 60 ping, myself included, averaging from around 90 to 100 ping before the migration to now sitting at around 150 to 160 after. This isn't a deal breaker or anything, but it did feel pretty frustrating at the time. The servers being moved did help with Australian ping, and I would assume China ping as well, so it is understandable as to why they moved, since China is such a big portion of their player base. Unfortunately, I don't have any screenshots of this due to the messages being in-game, but I did also see a trend of people wishing for the Elfbot dungeons to come back in the event season, which sadly didn't come to pass. Christmas introduced all of the usual festive activities that we're used to seeing in PokeMMO. Lost presents, limited time swarms, the Starmie hide and seek, a shiny boost, mysterious balls, with a limited time shiny boost for the duration of the event, raids, with the final raid offering Jirachi, and a limited time cosmetic, and the return of mystery PvP boxes. We also saw some cool new alphas come into the game, Snorlax, Wobbuffet, and my personal favourite being Hitmontop. We also saw the introduction of new permanent raid being Meloetta, which proved to be pretty difficult, taking a pretty good chunk of time before we saw the first clear. One of the biggest additions that we saw during this time was the inclusion of box trading, something that community has been asking for literal years. This is such a big quality of life change that benefits everyone who buys and sells Pokemon in bulk, no longer having to take a very long time to manually mail or trade 5 months at a time. A long overdue addition, but a very welcome one regardless. I again believe this serves as a good sign in terms of player to dev communication. While it did take a while for the devs to add box trading as a feature, it does show that they are listening to the community and not just doing their own thing and making their own choices. So I'll take any small win that I can. Again, it's time for my favourite part of the event, being the cosmetics. We saw some silly and goofy cosmetics this event, with the Christmas camo, and then some seriously cool cosmetics like the Elven set, Star Headband, and Pudgy Penguin, and even a new mount, being Rudolph. The mount is especially interesting since it's the first mount where we are riding an animal. I know we have the dragon mounts from a couple years ago, but the dragons don't really have any sort of movement animation. Seeing the legs move and feel like you're actually riding around and not just floating is something that I think is really cool about the Rudolph mount. One of my favourite things about the Christmas event was the event randoms PvP, being Little Cup, meaning it consisted of only baby Pokemon. I'm a huge fan of all the little guys, so naturally I really enjoyed this mode. Midway through the event, we were also introduced to our second ever Alpha Legendary raid, being Alpha Articuno. Only being obtainable during the festive period upon completing the Alpha Articuno raid. The coolest thing about this is that we saw some slightly different raid teams than what we usually do, with Head Smash Archeops being a prominent member of the raid team. The section on Christmas feels much shorter than the other sections so far in the video, and I think this might be a reflection of my opinions on the event. Or it could really be that there wasn't really much going on. After doing some reflection and looking back at my experience with the event, I can honestly say that the event felt a little bit lackluster to me, personally at least. As someone who already completed the raids in previous years, there was little to no reason for me to do them again. And with the fact that the limited time vanities were purchasable from the GTL, it really did feel quite pointless to be repeating them. My general gameplay loop this event was to shiny hunt for my Espeon, which is still ongoing by the way, and grab swarms once they spawn. Occasionally feeling a bit adventurous and grabbing some lost presents. I'm honestly not sure if this is a common opinion or if this is something that others share. I would probably assume it is, but I'm not certain. That being said, the positives from this event do stand strong. And while we may have been lacking in actual gameplay content, with a lot of it being repeated from previous years, and even stripped down, with no return of the Elfbot dungeons, I still did enjoy the event. It just felt as if it was bridging the gap between Halloween and Lunar New Year somewhat. And now I reached the final event of the season, Lunar New Year, which just so happens to be my personal favourite of all of the events. Just like most of the other events, there was actually a bit of discourse going on before the event dropped, with the event expected to be pushed on the 17th of February 2026. There was a post made on the forums on the 16th, asking how long the estimated downtime would be for the patch to be pushed, and developer Q responded, saying how the update was hoping to be ready and pushed for the following day. However, the 17th came and went without any update being pushed. A couple of hours after the expected time frame, there was a delay notice posted to the forums, with another developer, Desu, making the post, almost certainly using AI to create an over-the-top post explaining how the dev team is working on something bigger and better than any of their past events, claiming to be dropping the event the following day on the 18th. I saw that some people were a little bit disgruntled with this post, and I think it mostly has something to do with the general tone and unserious nature of the progress update. However, this is one of the most clear-cut examples of dev-to-player communication that we've ever seen. They explained how they underestimated the amount of time that some of the new additions would take, and actually apologized. This might be a hot take, I'm not sure, but personally I would take this level of communication over nothing any day of the week. We just need to look past the memey nature of the post. There was also a follow-up post from Q, which acknowledged the player base distaste for the seemingly AI post. On February 18th, the event was pushed. The update added what we have come to expect from the Lunar New Year event, with the abundant shrine mode, swarms, raids, cherish balls and red envelopes. One small change we did see this event was a change to the usual 10% money boost modifier that stays alive throughout the event period. We also received the shiny charm buff to go alongside this, with Link members getting the full 10% benefit over the standard 5%. We also saw some core changes as to how the shrine game mode would function, allowing the game instance to be paused and left, being able to continue later at your own pace, essentially meaning that you no longer had to dedicate multiple hours in one sitting to hitting a high shrine run, along with other changes to make it more difficult, such as reducing the amount of PP available, which is always appreciated for me personally. There were also changes as to how the leaderboard for the shrine would work, now being the top 200 players overall rather than the 50 teams. There was also a plethora of moveset changes, being updated to what I understand as being a variation of the Generation 9 move learn set. One of the biggest additions we saw were the 3 additional permanent raids, being the Swords of Justice, Cobalion, Terrakion, and Virizion. Now I'm saying 3 as at the time of scripting and recording the other 2 that were promised are not in the game, or we haven't found a way to access them yet. Q replied to someone on the forums, saying that they were adding 18 raids in total, with 13 being time exclusive to the event. This leaves the 3 Swords of Justice we ended up getting throughout the event, and 2 additional raids in which we are yet to see. Now, if we look at the trends in the instance info tab, all of the permanent raids have 2 instances, being the recapture and the rebattle. One of the raids is almost certainly Keldeo, as the 4th and final Sword of Justice, and the fact that he has been removed from the King of the Hill as a legendary. The raid situation is not reassuring to look at if we are taking what Q said about getting the 18 raids to be true. The only thing we can do is hope that these 2 additional raids are added as drip feed content in the run-up to the next Shiny Wars in summer. Event Randoms PvP made a return this event, and personally I thought it was super cool. This time the theme was only legendaries and mythicals. To my knowledge it included every single legendary up until the end of Generation 5. Some of the cooler features from this revision of the randoms was that you could get shiny charms as a reward as a rare drop, and that the legendaries that we were using in battle had a chance to be shiny, which was kind of a neat addition in being able to see some really cool and pretty shinies that we don't usually get to see in the game. I think the PvP saw some extra play during Lunar New Year as well. This is probably most likely due to the rewards just generally being better. Some of the cosmetics in Lunar New Year had a decently low drop rate from the sealed product, and honestly they looked really cool, so being able to get them through some randoms games was a neat touch. It also allowed me to buy cheap and sell high, so thanks for that devs. Now, as has become a trend within this video and throughout the year, not everything was sunshine and rainbows. With the addition of shrines also brought with it a plethora of bugs. Players were reporting a lot of them, including items not being delivered upon completion of the shrine, items completely disappearing mid-run, progress not saving, moves not working properly or working at all, among a handful of other issues. These would later be addressed in multiple patch notes, but the event was not off to a good start, especially considering we had already dealt with a delay. I personally think this should have been tested more thoroughly. The Abundant Shrine is one of, if not the most, unique minigame mode that we see within PokeMMO as a whole, and is the main appeal of the event for most people. So with it being close to unplayable, along with upping the difficulty compared to last year, it was very frustrating to even try and enjoy the shrine within the first couple of days of the event. And finally, for the last of the negatives, we have something that isn't tied directly to the event, and something that really needs its own video. The removal of the program Scrappy or Scrapey, I'm not too sure which one it is. After the event dropped, players who use this program were reporting that they were receiving several automated messages saying that prohibited software has been detected on their device, and if it wasn't removed, it could result in a ban. This was found to be caused by screen mirroring software that is often used by high-end endgame players within the game, in order to mirror their phone screen onto their PC so that they can play on multiple accounts more easily. A lot of players were not happy and likely still aren't happy about this change. Desu would make a post on the forums, replying to player concern and clarifying why the banning of the screen mirroring software was introduced, being that cheating was becoming a big issue with this method of playing. Overall, I don't believe this will have a significant effect on the player base. Screen mirroring software was more of a comfort feature. I believe that players will still be playing on multiple devices, just having to use the devices manually rather than being able to control them from their PC. Like I said, this topic isn't really one that can be discussed in detail in this video and really needs its own video to do justice, as there is a lot of moving parts and intricacies as to when it comes to the topic of the economy and money making. That being said, I had an extremely productive conversation with two people who kindly came into my stream during the event to give their opinions. Essentially, we collectively came to the conclusion that in order for the game to be healthy, players should not feel that playing on multiple characters at once, or even owning multiple characters, is necessary in order to keep up in the endgame. Single character players should have the ability, through grinding, to be able to generate the same amount of resources as someone who plays on a dozen different characters. I don't want to get much deeper into this topic here, but just so my opinion is clear, I'm of the opinion that having players feel like it is necessary to own and play on multiple characters is not healthy for the game. This is probably the hottest take of the video, so I think it's a good time to remind everyone that these conversations and discussions are to be done respectfully. Listen to each side of the argument and respond in a way that is productive. It's okay if you do not agree with someone else, and everyone is allowed their own opinion. On to a less controversial topic and something much more fun to talk about, at least for me, the cosmetics. Lunar New Year has always been my favourite event for cosmetics. They always seem to be the coolest, and this event was no exception. From the origin set to the super wacky and out there unicorn hair. This event was honestly packed with some super cool and unique cosmetics, some of my favourite including the origin ring, the flower cape, the horse plush, and the noble steed. I love seeing the devs expand their cosmetic pool, and I really hope they continue to do so. To summarise and give my thoughts on the Lunar New Year event, I would say that it's a very big mixed bag. As someone who doesn't participate in many raids, having done them in previous years, and viewing the permanent raids as post-event content, I think that the hype that the devs generated when talking about doing things bigger and better than ever before was somewhat not true, at least to me. Along with the bugs at the launch of the event, it was off to a super rocky start. The delay was thankfully addressed by giving us an extension of 3 days, which was super cool. One of the most surprising factors this event was just how well the mysterious cherish balls held their value. I think the devs adding the 15% boost to shiny odds to the balls only during the event really helped them maintain their value and stop them dropping in price to be basically worth nothing, like we have seen previously with some of the other sealed products. I had lots of fun this event, but I don't really think that that was only down to the event itself. This was the first event that I streamed, and the support I received from the community was just absolutely mind-blowing. Lunar New Year 2026 will always hold a special place in my heart and a really special memory to me. Thank you to all of the community who made my experience so special. And I think that just about does it. I believe I've covered most of the significant goings on when it comes to the events. As much as there's been significant ups and downs throughout the year, the community disagreements, the dev-player communication issues, and much more, I am hoping that the devs have learned from this year. Dev-to-player communication has improved over the course of the year, which is always a good thing to see. While still not being perfect and honestly being very far from it, I believe that we are seeing progress, and I think it's something that we should value. As a community, we are always wanting what's best, and for the game to be the best it can be. The devs are people too, and I'm sure that they're just as passionate as us players. We saw some new additions to the event this year, with at least one permanent raid per event, new limited time cosmetics being tied to the raids, PvP players being able to do what they love and participate within the event at the same time, the shiny boost to the balls which make things exciting, new alphas in each event, and a handful of useful quality of life additions, such as box trading and more. I think, as a community, sometimes we focus on the negative aspects of the game and what we perceive as bad changes made to it. And don't get me wrong, I'm guilty of doing that just as much as anyone else. I'm one of the first people to complain when I perceive a change as bad. I also think that there are some glaring issues that need to be urgently addressed within the next couple of months, especially when it comes to the state of the economy. I don't think that we'll be able to hold out much longer if something isn't done urgently. With all that being said, and this might be complete cope, I am very hopeful for the upcoming year. If the dev communication and steady additions of content keep coming to the game, I believe that as a community we will be okay. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me ramble. The fact that you've watched all the way to the end really means a lot to me. I've always enjoyed watching and consuming longer form video essay style content, and this is somewhat of a test run for another much larger upcoming project of mine. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more similar content around PokeMMO in the future, please subscribe, leave a like, and keep an eye out for any upcoming videos. I also have to do the mandatory plug of my Twitch. I try to stream 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday at around 9 PM GMT. These streams are much less serious and more fun, so please come through and hang out, I'm always happy to have you. You can find me at twitch.tv/2spooky.